In this movie, I'll be showcasing specific features and methods that, if you familiarize yourself with, will make your vector building experience a lot better. You'll use a combination of many of them, but overall, these are the go-to functionality and methods you can use to create almost any project you need to in Adobe Illustrator. So with that said, let's get started. We have a range of things to cover, and this original workshop was something I did at a conference called Creative Pro, and usually when I speak there, they give me the topic to do. And the topic they gave me was dramatically improve your vector drawing skills. And I'm like, hold on. Vector drawing skills? You don't really draw in Illustrator. You build in Illustrator. And the reason why I said that is because, well, can you draw in Illustrator? Of course you can, but it's best done using devices like a Wacom Cintiq. This is a Wacom Cintiq I have, and this was some artwork that I actually drew in Illustrator and colored it in Illustrator using a Wacom pressure sensitivity to get that nice organic line work going. And can you do it? Yes, but you definitely need a Wacom in order to do this. Yes, there's Sidecar with Apple if you're using Apple OS, but there is no pressure sensitivity when it comes to using the Apple Pencil and Sidecar with your iPad Pro and Illustrator. That's the unfortunate part about it. I wish Apple would get its act together and actually release an iMac that can collapse down. You could draw on it inside of apps like Photoshop, inside of apps like Illustrator, and get all the pressure sensitivity with the Apple Pencil and the ease of the Apple OS, but all within Illustrator. But for whatever reason, they still haven't done it. If they did, they'd probably kill off Wacom overnight. You can do that kind of drawing to a limited sense in Illustrator on the iPad. You can definitely draw out shapes on the iPad, I should say. In my opinion, it's not so great for inking. I think it's just not as fluid. I think there's a better Adobe app where you can do vector inking using vector brushes, and I think that's Fresco. And if I need to do that, that's the one I use. Is I go to Fresco because it's kind of a hybrid app where they have both Photoshop and vector-based brushes that you can use to ink, to draw, to do your artwork. And I really wish this mindset would come to Adobe Illustrator on the desktop because, frankly, brush technology inside of Illustrator is kind of old. They've never really done anything extensive with it since they first released it. It would be nice if they turned Illustrator on the desktop into a hybrid app where you could use Photoshop brushes within the context of vector art, much in the same way that Affinity allows you to do that with Affinity Designer, their vector equivalent. So hopefully, will they? I don't know, not going to hold my breath, but this is the type of digital inking I'll do with vector brushes using Fresco on my iPad Pro. The only thing I don't do on my iPad Pro is the coloring, because when I ink like this, every time my Apple Pencil touches the screen, it creates a shape. It's much like the blob brush in Illustrator, but unlike Illustrator, it won't fuse those shapes into one cohesive whole. Therefore, when I push this to Illustrator, this file will literally have like 300,000 anchor points in it, and I have to spend time cleaning it up, and then I'll colorize it in Illustrator. But you do get some cool results. Add color, add some texture, and you can pull off some really crazy artwork. I call this style Psycho Mosaic, and I'll do a video on this for my YouTube channel at some point. I just need to figure out what I want to do. So when it all comes down to it, yes, they asked me to call this dramatically improve your vector drawing skills, but I think it's better titled dramatically improve your vector building skills, because you build in Illustrator. Can you draw? Should you draw? Absolutely. I think all designers should draw, whether or not they want to ever become an illustrator. That's not the point. Drawing improves your cognition and your craftsmanship. If you draw something out and figure it out before you jump on the computer, you're going to be able to build it with a lot more precision. Whether you draw in analog or digital, doesn't matter. Same cognitive benefits, same craftsmanship benefits. My daughter works on her iPad, and she does all of her drawing on her iPad. Some drawing can be very simple. If you're working on icons, you don't have to do anything more complex than what's shown here, which are just simple thumbnail sketches, because Illustrator has geometric tools that allow you to build these ideas precisely and easily using them. So drawing can be used at for any type of project to figure it out. We're going to take a look at something more complex, and that is maybe you have a theme. In this case, this company's name has RAM in the name. Ransom is the name of the family who owns the company, and they wanted a RAM as part of their brand identity. So we went to reference real world pictures of the topic, which is a RAM in this case, and we drew from it. Now, we could do this drawing in analog where I'm using it to guide my proportions and shape, but I'm deducing complexity down into simple shapes and forms to create a mark that's going to work in a graphic sense. You could do this traditionally, but actually it was done digitally. This was my daughter's sketches using the reference to guide her. The one I isolated was the one that I thought kind of had a heroic pose to it, and I like the proportions to it. I just thought we needed to handle the shapes a little differently. So this is where I go back to analog, and this is how we work together. She does everything digitally. Not to say she doesn't use Illustrator. She does. She builds logos and stuff in Illustrator, but most of her illustration is on the iPad Pro using Clip Studio. She loves that. But I'll take this, print it out, and I go back to analog and I start redrawing it, figuring out shape and form and how I'm going to shape it. This isn't something I'm just pulling out of thin air. I look at reference. I look at the reference. I look at highlights and how the shadows come up to the edge of those highlights. And how could I simplify that form but reflect the same aspect of lighting? All it is deducing shapes. Do their horns really have detail like this? No. But in a graphic sense, it represents that well. That's why I drew it that way. Is the shadow exactly like this? No. That doesn't matter. That's where artistic license comes in. It's about taking it and interpreting how you could handle it. And there's a lot of experimentation to this. But the more you do it, the more you take your time, you'll figure out what works best. And along the way, you might try something and realize, yeah, that's not working too hot, and go back and change it later. That's the creative process. The creative process is rarely a clean and simple one. There's usually kind of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back type approach until you get something that's really going to work well. I usually redraw it at this stage, maybe adjusting a few things, and then I scan it in. Now, this is where my age is showing and my audience's age is showing, because when I say I scan it in, I get a lot of people going, what do you mean by a scanner? And I'm like, when I was first asked that, I was like, seriously? I thought they were like, I don't know, just punking me or whatever. This was at a workshop I did. And I go, you really don't know what a scanner is? He goes, no. Would you like take your phone and use a scanner type app or take a picture of it or something? And I go, no, you actually use a flatbed scanner like this. This is Epson Perfection. I have a model that's a few generations older than this one, but it pretty much looks the same. And I don't use all the stupid features like print and email a scan. Whoever uses that in PDF, I don't use those. I just use it to scan my drawings. I also use it to create textures, because I'll find like an old LP with really cool worn texture on it. I'll buy it in the secondhand shop, and I'll scan it in, create texture, use it in design. So a lot of different ways you can use it. But a scanner, they're cheap. They're only like $48, $45. Really worth the time and investment to get one, and to use it is it's a go-to tool for me. So that's what I mean by scanning it in. Once you have it scanned in, I place it into Illustrator, usually save it as a bitmap TIFF like this. I'll go to transparency palette, set it to like 15, 20%, and then I'll just lock the layer. And then it becomes a roadmap for vector building, meaning I just follow what I've already figured out is going to work in terms of shape and form. And it now comes down to craftsmanship. All vector artwork is math, learning where to place your anchor points. Usually, and I say usually, not always, because it's not always the case. Usually it's going to be on a tangent, but not always. Most of these are on tangents, especially these two here, so on and so forth. This isn't really a tangent, it's just an ideal location. So that's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a general overall rule. Once you have that, you can build your final art, colorize it, and this is what I would categorize as illustrative design. If you've ever thought, what is illustrative design? Saul Bass, he was the illustrative designer back in the day. The Quaker Oats logo is distinctly illustrative design specifically. If you think about popular brands now, the Target logo, good example of graphic design. Anybody can build that using the ellipse tool in about 45 seconds. That's how complex that is. Another logo that represents illustrative design would be the Green Mermaid Starbucks logo. That takes a bit of knowledge and drawing to pull that off, an illustrative eye, if you will, to execute a design like that and a design like this. But I think you can do it. It just comes down to practicing the principles to get you there. And the biggest one is shape deduction. Looking at complexity and simplifying it. If you're thinking to yourself at this point, watching this video, yeah, but Vaughn, I can't draw worth crap. It's like, you know what? Neither could I at one point in my life. I just started, never stopped. And the nice thing about drawing, you only get better. If you want to improve your drawing skills, check out this free resource online. The Etherton brothers are based out of the UK. They have this blog that they run, and they post all of these free drawing tutorials, and they're all under the title of How to Think When You Draw. They're absolutely brilliant. Just check these out and just start practicing it. Stay with it. And you're only going to get better. You're going to see how you can use it in the context of your work, and you're going to see a drastic improvement. You'll be able to approach projects where in the past, you can only build so many logos with circles, squares, and rectangles. So if you can get more organic, more freeform with your shapes, then you can do more illustrative design, and that's going to open up a lot of opportunity. So it's always good to start pushing yourself into an uncomfortable position. You never move into new areas without it first being uncomfortable. So don't worry if you suck when you start, because everybody sucks when they start. These guys also publish their books through Kickstarter. This just shows book 1 and 2, but they just had a book 5 Kickstarter, so there's 5 of them, and I'm sure they're going to be doing more. And every time they do more, you can buy the older books too and support their Kickstarter campaign. So make sure you follow them, visit their blog, start practicing your drawing, stick with it. I know you can do it. Anybody can. And whenever you approach anything creative, reference is always going to help you. It doesn't matter if it's more realistic, doesn't matter if it's graphic, because you can look at a real world image like this bird and discern how to create it in a graphic way that the photo might not completely support that. So if you look at the photo of the bird, its tail is shooting out the back here. This is where photography is very forgiving. If we illustrated it exactly like this, or iconified it based off of this photograph, and we have it shooting out the back, it'd look a little odd, it'd look off. All we have to do is just figure out an ideal way of handling that. So if we go to the ellipse tool, we can go ahead and figure out where we're going to place a shape for the head. Maybe it goes right here. We can take the beak shape we've already created, go to Pathfinder, unite it like this. This is where I'll select these two images. One's just a big ellipse rotated, kind of squashed a bit to create the body. This back one is going to create what ends up being, in the photograph, it's a wing, but we're going to turn it into a tail. We'll go ahead and unite those two together. This is where I'll bring in a throwaway shape for no other reason than to edit the other shape like this. I'll select the head, the torso now. I'll fuse that together. I think that's going to work fine. Let's go ahead and bring this to the front, the eye. You can use strokes. Strokes are always a great way to build content. In this case, we're going to beef this up to create the volume you need. We'll turn these into 18. His legs need to be little pipe cleaners, but those need to be thicker. So we'll turn that into 8. Make sure you have round on so when it gets to, I don't even know what they call it, reverse knees. Whatever they call it on a bird's legs, joint, I guess. I don't know. I'll use round because it just looks better than being dead straight. Once we have those, we can take this bounding container, I guess, for this overall design, and we can apply the thick 18 point on that. I can tell now we don't even need this one. We can get rid of it. We don't even need most of that. We can go ahead and get rid of that. And if you have Smart Guides turned on, notice if I hover over the anchor, nothing's showing up. If I turn on Smart Guides, Command U, and I hover over an anchor, it tells me I'm there. If I hover over a path, it tells me there. The other thing it does is when I move, I can slide on its own path, and it makes editing really easy. So I can just slide it right on its own path. I can go over here, slide it on its own path, and I can bring those in because we're ultimately going to expand all of the strokes. So I'll select everything that's a stroke here. I'll go to path, I'll go to outline stroke, turn it into shapes. We'll go ahead and unite it. We'll go ahead and select the eye. We're going to punch that through the body of the bird. Oops, there we go. Make sure we're on the right layer. I think I'm on the wrong layer. Yep, bring it to the right layer so it's on top of the body. Then we can punch it through. Then we can sample it like that, select all the other object, go ahead and unite it like this. We can go ahead and turn off our photo reference now. We don't need it. I'll go to compound path and I'll go release. We're going to select the background element. This will become like a dark blue. We'll select all these interior shapes like this. And maybe those become like a teal color, maybe a lighter teal color, like that. Now, on a design like this, I would always zoom in on areas because vector comes to a dagger sharp point when you're creating iconic images like this. And sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. So this is where subtle rounding comes in. I would go on in something like this, and I'd add a subtle round because it just looks better. I'd also do that. I might come down to this section right here, select that anchor, and go ahead and add a subtle round there. So I think that's just part of craftsmanship. I think it looks better overall. But once again, deducing down into simple form, was this side actually his wing? Yes. Does it have to be? No. This could read as a wing or it could read as a tail. I think it reads more so, but it looks great. So once again, you can use photography to help guide your proportions. Now, last year, after COVID year, I wanted to try to do something creatively positive and try to do it for the whole year. It's the first time I've ever done this. Every day, I created what I call modern culture art. I'd just pick a theme, I'd sketch it out, and I'd build one of these a day. At the end of the year, I'd created 374. I probably will never do it again because it did get a little stressful at times. And if you visit my YouTube channel, you'll see a bunch of time lapse of building these, and some of them are fun. I definitely have my favorites, but I want to walk you through a process because building this art, I needed to build it in a simple way. And so we're going to use strokes. It all starts with the same square proportion. This is my pencil sketch for the sea turtle. Here's all the strokes that I've created so far on this turtle. But one thing I discovered as I was working on this artwork is that there's certain ways you can think about building shapes that make it a whole lot easier. So all we're going to do is we're going to build this fin using the same stroke here. So let's go ahead and grab the pen tool. And we'll go here and we'll start here. We'll go here and I'll click. I'm not even worrying about the curve. I don't think you should worry about those immediately. You don't need to. And we're going to go down here. I'm going to place it here. Now, the reason why I did that, I didn't want to place it right where I want it to go. Otherwise, it would automatically connect to the head. And I didn't want it to do that. So I'm going to move it up so it does connect to that same endpoint. Now I'm going to go to the anchor point tool. And this is where you can add those curves in. I just find it's a little faster without trying to build it as you go sometimes. Just do it that way. And then you saw what those what the corner widget can do. This is what I discovered. If I think in a flat sense, I know if I rounded it, the path would actually go here. But if I build it like this, after doing 300 plus of these over the year, I would start thinking this way. And I go, you know why? Because I could just round it and get what I want. And it was easier than trying to click and adjust the anchor and get that curve. If I thought in a flat format, and then I came back and made adjustments and then rounded it, I could get exactly what I want a lot faster. And I've never even thought of that really before until I started building this art collection, because I would just do it the same way I've always done it. And this way, now that I build certain shapes, I think that way because it's going to make the process easier. So I'm going to create a copy of this, Command-C, Command-F, which is a clone. I have F3 key set up. Find a central anchor point, use the reflect tool, and reflect it over. Now, all of this artwork is based off of a square. We actually don't need this. I just had it there to showcase that it is a square format. Everything here is ultimately just going to be black. All this will be the only part that's a black fill. Everything else will be based, other than the guide itself. We can actually turn off the sketch layer now. Deselect the eye. All of this is going to be a black outline, and the tolerance I used on all the art, so it all works as a unified whole of a set on this, is 8 points. So all we're going to do is beef this up to 8 points. We want to terminate our paths with rounds. So you can see here how that looks on the rounds. Other paths you wouldn't, like these in here. But this is what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to select everything and just go to Path, Outline Stroke. Then I'm immediately going to click Unite. That'll fuse all the shapes together. Once I have that, I'm going to go back to Object, and I'm going to go Compound, and I'm going to go Release. And you might have to ungroup it a few times. Then I'll release it. If I go ahead and just change this color so you can see what's going on. Now we have all these free-floating objects. These two we don't even need. We're going to take the eye, take the head. We're going to minus front like that. We'll take this one and this hexagon, minus front. Now all of these shapes that are on the interior will turn white. The exterior shape, this one will remain black. But on this style, I have a 20-point outline on everything. So at this point, I'll take this, knowing that this was 8 points, I'll further offset it an additional 12 to get the thickness. Click OK, delete that, and now I have my artwork ready to fill with color. What I usually do, and this is somewhat time consuming, but I think aesthetically it pays off, is I'll go in, this is where I'll use a plugin to round, because I can, the plugin I like to use is called dynamic corners is I'll just select any corner and I can just pull it out. I don't have to select an anchor point. So if I go, yeah, I like that round, I can go up here and just apply it there. Or on this one, maybe I want it smaller, and then I'll apply it there. Or I'll establish how thick I want these, and I'll apply them here. I'll go to this one, so on and so forth. Now, just to kind of showcase something, you can see I get multiple anchor points at times because when you shape build like this is just going to happen in Illustrator. This is why I use plugins. Is I'm going to go to a tool here that's really cool. Let's see. Let me find it. There we go. Smart Remove. And I can just go over something like this. Smart Remove. I can even select anchor points and go Smart Remove. And it retains the curve perfectly. This is why I love it. Smart anchor point removal. I've been using that for years before Illustrator added it to their iPad version, but it's still not on the desktop. I don't know why it takes them so long to add features like that, but I'd love to see that come to the desktop too, because right now it's too easy to get extra anchor points when you don't want it. Ultimately, we colored it like that, and that's how I created the whole set. I'll use this kind of approach of using strokes to ultimately expand and create my final art in the context of branding as well. There's a canal boat company out of the UK, and one of the directions I gave them, and as I suggested, is, hey, you can come up with a brand character. We can call him Captain Quack. Nobody else in your community, your business community, that is, has anything like this. This would be unique. You could sell merchandise. They didn't go for Captain Quack, but I still like him. But that's the process I used to create him. It was all strokes. So now let's move to, so far I've showed you shape building techniques. We built the sea turtle using stroke building techniques. The next one is what most people familiarize themselves with Illustrator, or if somebody asked them, what do you think Illustrator is? Well, use the pen tool to create artwork. Well, yes. And that's what we're going to go over here. And this is what I would call freeform building. So here's some hand lettering I did for a podcast we do. And I wanted to create some of these letter forms now. If we zoom in on the sea, there are certain letter forms that are easier to create than others. And as I kind of explained in a previous movie on my YouTube channel, I have these default settings and graphic styles. So this one I can click, and if I go to stroke, you can see it's 1 point. And I have other ones where 75, I have this in there 1 point, 75, and I guess I don't have 0.5 in this file. Oh, that's right. That's because I set this up for a workshop. But anyway, I might go for a thinner style line. In this case, we'll go ahead and start here. Anywhere where your artwork comes to a point gets a point. Those are easy to discern. So these first two, easy. As it wraps around a curve like this, you just want to think, where's the next ideal location for an anchor point? This is such a shallow curve at top, we don't need to put one at what would be a tangent up here. We're just going to go down here. But let's say you click and you start pulling it out, and then you realize, oh, I should have had that moved down. Well, you would have to go Command-Z, go back, start over, and redo it. But you don't have to do that. Here's a trick I found out last year that an Adobe engineer told me that I didn't know for 15 years, and you might not know this, but let's say you do that. Let's say you start drawing it and you're actually pulling out the handles and you go, oh man, that should have been down. Well, don't let go of your mouse button. Hold the space bar down and you can relocate in process your anchor point to a correct location. So from here, we'll move it down to here, let go of the space bar, continue editing, and you get it right where you want. How's that? I was like, are you kidding me? Why didn't I know that for 15 years? So there you go. You learn something new every day. So that's all we're going to do is we're going to just drop in all of our anchor points. So this is what I call a rough build. And then I'll go back, and you can use the anchor point tool if you're using only native features in AI. But on this, I just barely pull it out just so I can get access to a handle. Then I go ahead and adjust it, grab the Beziers, and start finessing. Now, the reason why I don't pull it out more than that if I'm using the anchor point tool, because this will happen. If I pull this out, or let's say I go down here and I pull it out, at times it'll break a smooth anchor point and it'll become a corner anchor point, and that's always frustrating. So usually the tool I use, because it existed before Illustrator once again ripped off this feature and added it to Illustrator, is I tend to use what's called the PathScribe tool, part of VectorScribe. VectorScribe includes the rounding I was showing you, but this is really nice because notice when I have VectorScribe tool selected and I select a shape, you see these white dots that show up. These are called ghost handles. One, the name is cool, ghost handle. How's that not cool? I can just grab it and pull it out. And this is such a great feature. Then I can do your normal, everyday kind of vector editing. I can also grab a path and move it kind of like that. And once again, at times in Illustrator, Illustrator will break these anchor points that are supposed to be smooth. So if we go to the anchor point tool like this, the main reason I don't like the anchor point tool is instead of isolating it to just this segment, it'll mess up. I can adjust this, but now it messes this up over here. So I have to go back and fix that. And it's like this constant back and forth. So I usually use the PathScribe one. And as I do it, I might move it down here and then adjust these like that. But notice this is now a corner anchor point. But they know Illustrator will break corners at times. So if I drag this up, when the S appears, that means it's fixed. Now it's acting like a smooth anchor point again. So they've resolved that within their own tool, which is pretty cool. But this is how I'll do most of my vector building. In this case, this is just typography. And I probably should have made this C a little different. I think it got a little flat there. So I would just adjust it. If I ever want to do, like, I think this is in a bad position, I'd pull it out. Then I'd kind of move it to what I felt is the ideal position. Then I'd readjust my handles. I think that looks a lot better. So freeform building. It can be a lot easier if you remember that spacebar trick that I showed you. Also, on a path like this, when you have all of these paths, let's go ahead and turn on this layer, which shows all the paths. It's always easier to build pieces. So don't try to build this A as a complete whole. Build it with the elliptical shape to create that easier. Then build this with the pen tool. This is easier to build this shape and this shape together. That way I can select them and just unite them together. Same with the T. It's better to do it that way. It's just easier. And the same way where I have this ligature going into the E as well. Now, the other thing, when you select a shape, your handles aren't always going to show up. If you have your direct selection tool, this is why if we go into preferences and we go to selection anchor points, show handles when multiple anchors are selected. I encourage you to turn this on and show anchor points in selection tool and shape tools. Why? Because it gives you good information. If you select a segment within a given shape, it'll show you the handles that are controlling it. If you select an anchor, it'll show you on both sides of that handle like that. That's always a good thing. If you option click a shape, it'll show you all the handles. Or if you drag select on shapes, it'll show you all the handles as well. And this is a good way to see where you can adjust and how you could pull out your handles to improve shape and form and finesse it until you have exactly what you want. Now, the final art on this ended up looking like this, and I invite you to listen to the Creative Shit Show. It's just me and 3 friends, and we talk about everything related to creativity. and the frustrations and the fun times and the bad times. It's just, it's a shit show. So you might want to watch that. The pen tool. I want you to practice what I just showed with holding the space bar down. And if you want more information on getting the actual source files that I'm using for this movie, just check in the description of this movie on YouTube and you'll see how you can do that. We're going to jump to the next thing here. And that is, this is my friend Russell Brown. He's a creative director at Adobe. I think he's like employee number 18, something like that. He's been there since day one. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, he brought Photoshop to Adobe, meaning he was working at Adobe. They sent him to a technology conference. He was seeing what people were doing with technology. He met the Knoll brothers, saw their version of what would end up becoming Photoshop, went back to Adobe and told Adobe, we need to buy this. This is the future. And that's why Photoshop exists now. He's a brilliant photographer. Follow him on Instagram. Doc Brown is his name, Dr. Brown. Great photography, going all around the world, doing incredible photo shoots. He asked me to brand a creativity workshop he's been doing for the last 20 years. And I was happy to do it. I said, Russell, you have to send me a good key lit photo of yourself and make it look like you're surprised. And this is what he sent me. The absolute best person to give me reference. This is where drawing comes in, because we're going to do some illustrative design, both illustration and design. And this is how I deduced it down into simple forms. This is what we're going to use to build from. Once again, I usually go to transparency, set it for 15, lock the layer, and just start building my shapes on top of it. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. Go ahead and zoom in. This is where I'll take a shape like this. I'll clone it, Command-C, Command-F, which just makes a clone of that shape. And then I'll select this, and here I'll just go to Pathfinder and we'll go to intersect. And that's how I create the shadowing area of this artwork. Now, one thing I want to show you is all of this was built using the pen tool, because these are all kind of, how do I put it? These are all very organic, free-flowing shapes, and it's ideal for that. Not everything is. If you look at this eye, we zoom in on the eye. This eye is pretty geometric. So let's turn on this one on this side. And I'm just going to show you how I built this. I'm just going to select this. And all we're going to do is we're going to go to Object, Offset Path. And all we're going to do here is we want to inset it, actually, not offset it. Go to the inside of this. So we're going to go minus 1.2215. Now, I'm just telling you right now, I always work in points and I always work in whole numbers. And you're probably going, well, that's not a whole number. That's because I size this so it's ideal for the video, which screws up all of my whole numbers. So I never punch it in. So yes, I have this written down in my notes because I knew I wouldn't forget it. But it will work. If we go ahead and preview it, you can see all it is insetting that amount. We'll go, okay, that's fine. Now we're going to scale to get the pupil. And so we can just clone this, Command-C, Command-F. I have that set up as an F3 key I just hit. And all we're going to do is we're going to scale this down to right about, I think right about there is fine. Right about there. I think that'll work. I think that's pretty good. All we're going to do now is this is now on top of the original shape we created. We're going to create a donut. So let's go ahead and minus front. A donut meaning this is the shape we're actually going to be editing. I'm just going to get rid of the fill here like that. We've created donut. This is where a throwaway shape comes in. I'll use this shape for no other reason than to edit the shape we just created like that. And this is where the process gets really simple. We can just take these two and once again use rounding to create that. And we might even take this and round it to get that. So when it's all said and done, we have everything needed. So if you think in shapes, it's going to help you figure out stuff. If you tried to create this with the pen tool, you'd never get it this perfect. It wouldn't look as good. So think simple, think in shapes, and it's going to help your process. Ultimately, for his event, he always does themes, and the theme for this is his last workshop event he's going to be doing. He'll still do stuff at Max, but independently, this is the last one he's did. This one was a rock and roll theme, so that's why I did a guitar. And yes, I know it's missing a string on the guitar. I took some artistic license there, but it's a good example of illustrative design, and more specifically, creating artwork and vector artwork with free-form vectors. And I definitely used the trick I showed you with the spacebar in order to do that. Not everything has to be for a client. I was watching this movie, I forget if it was last year or the year before, called Lighthouse, and William Dafoe's the actor showing here. And this scene came on. I told my wife, pause it. I want to take a photo of that. That's a cool shot. And I took a photo, and it kind of enlarged his head because my camera was pointing up a bit. But it still looked cool, so I just brought it into Photoshop, blew out the contrast. And this is a good example of, for no other reason than just practicing creativity, I decided to simplify this, to figure out how I deduce this down into simple shapes. And so this was the drawing I created from it. And now, as I go forward to build it, I don't bother to redraw it or refine it because this was just me experimenting. But I just want to show how if you think in shapes, it makes the process go a lot faster. So obviously, the easiest shapes on here to build are the ones that's circular, whether it's a circle for the eyes or the nose. You can just use Pathfinder methods to create that. Ultimately, this would be part of the highlight on his nose, and this would make that part down here. But what I really want to show you is the power of plugins, because I don't use a ton of plugins, but the plugins I use every single day. There's 4 of them. Vector Scribe has many of the tools I use on a day-to-day basis. There's Subscribe. That's the one I'm going to show you here. And there's one called Collider Scribe, and that's what these icons up here. Subscribe is made up of this tool, this tool, this tool, and this tool. What we're going to focus on, and by the way, there's more than 4 tools. This has 3 other ones under here. This top one I used for years before one day I go, I should probably check out what some of these other tools do. And I checked this one out, and I was like, are you kidding me? Oh my God, if I would have started using that 5 years ago, I would have saved so much time. The cool part about this, let's go ahead and zoom in a little further like that so you can see this really well. This is called the Arch by Points tool. We're going to click where it comes to point, gets a point. Those are easy. Where it clicks over here for the other point. And then notice you can just bend it. Click, click. Oh, sorry. Now I'm getting nervous. Oh, my hand slipped. Let's try that again. Click, click, bend, click, click, bend. And you can see how fast this goes. You can also do circular shapes. We're not going to do that right now. And we'll do that. And we'll click, click, like this. And the one thing I want to point out is I'm not having to touch any Bezier curves to create that. It's just incredibly quick. So this has fundamentally changed how I create certain parts of my vector art. If I have an area in my artwork that's like this, I'll use this tool to go ahead and create it, because once I get to a point where it goes more organic, for example, where it goes maybe into a shape that's going to require a back and forth nature like an S shape, that's where then I'll switch to the pen tool and just go back to normal vector building mode, free-form vector building using the pen tool. But this is just an absolute brilliant tool that Astute Graphics created. Now, it wasn't intended for this. When they created this tool, it was just intended so you could just simply, you could, did it again. Sorry, I'm talking and trying to do something at the same time. It was just made to do an arch. So when it first came out, when I start at the next anchor point and I want to create another arch, it wouldn't connect it. I had to drag select and go Command J to join it. And I recorded a video and I showed Astute Graphics. I go, this is making this really easy to do. And they're going, their response was, yeah, we never intended it to be used that way. And they're going, but that's really cool. And I mentioned to them, I just said it'd be kind of cool if I had an option where a preference or something where it would automatically join. They go, yeah, that is a good idea. 2 weeks later, they add it to the program. Now, if you don't want it to join, you just hold Option down when you're using it and it won't join. But talk about ease of use. So ultimately on this one, I create all my base artwork is showing here. I go in, colorize it, and it came out pretty cool. Now, I don't recommend this movie. I actually hated the movie. I just loved the aesthetic because it had a film noir kind of lighting style that was kind of cool. Let's keep marching on. We got about three more things I want to show you here, and then we'll call it quits. And this is regarding color and detail. So after you create your art, after you build your art, and it's all precise using different methods like the shape building method or the stroke building method or freeform building method, most of the time you're going to use a combination of all of them. Now you want to start coloring. Well, maybe you might have a base color like this red and this gold, and you want to create a color that's a shadow color of this. How are you going to do this? Well, I would go to the color palette. We'll go to CMYK. I'm working in CMYK mode. I always work in CMYK and go to RGB if needed, never the other way around. I find it works better that way. So this applies distinctly to CMYK mode, but if you think in a pigment sense, in actual painting sense, if you're painting, how would you mix your colors? Well, here, I don't want it this saturated because it's going to be a shadow color. So I'm going to diminish my saturation by about half to about 43, let's say. And then I'm going to desaturate the yellow to half. We'll bring that down to about 42. And then I'm going to add some black to it because it's a shadow. So let's add 15% black. And this is the color we're going to get. Now, once we have this, we can go ahead and drag and drop it and then double click into it and make sure you select global color because that's a good habit to get into. Notice all my colors have this white triangle. That's because they're all global. Click, because if I apply this throughout a design, I have, let's say, 100 objects with it, I can adjust my color and it adjusts everything using that color, whether it's a tint or anything. It's really helpful. So once you have this, then we can simply go down to transparency. We can go to blend mode. We can go to multiply, and you can see it creates a nice shadow color over the top of the base color. Now, if I was doing a highlight color, let's say, on red, I never like using white. I'll start with a base color, and as long as it's global, and you can see the swatch is, we can go to color and we can slide it, and this will create a tint of that color. So I would just slide it down to about 60% tint, like that. And then I would go to transparency and I adjust the transparency to maybe half the value, 50%. And this is how I would create a highlight color rather than using white. I think white tends to come off. I just don't have a good history with white on this kind of color like red. Also, certain purples it acts weird on as well. But we are going to use it down here. Let's go to this one. We'll stick with the highlight color first. And on this, I'm just going to color it white. And this is going to be easy. If we just go to 30 and adjust it, you can get a nice highlight color. Maybe you wanted it a little brighter. You could go to 35. That's a pretty easy one to figure out, just using opacity with the color white on a lighter hue. That works. Now, when it comes to a lighter hue and you want to create a shadowing color, I would go back to color again, go to CMYK, and right now we have 90% value. Well, I find that it's the same type of principle. We'll go down to 40% value here, but instead of adding black, because black will muddy it, and I don't really want to muddy it, but I want it to be a shadow type color. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in 20 to the color here. And again, we'll go to the transparency palette, and I'm going to select multiply. And when it multiplies with the base art, you get this really nice shadowing color. That's how I handle that type of detailing if I'm working on an illustration, for example. So let's take a look at an example. Here's an illustration, a Krabuki illustration. My daughter gets annoyed when I show this artwork because she goes, "That's a dad joke." But I like the artwork. I did stickers with it. But we use the same principle to do all the shading here. So here's the shading on this. So flat, no shading, with shading. Then we have the highlights, same principle. Highlights applied here. And then I do shadowing again, but this is what I call deep shadows. It's where it gets really dark just to add more interest and depth to the illustration. And then what really brings it to life is the eye detail, using those same principles within the eye to really breathe life into this illustration. So that's how I do coloring and detail in general. There's a lot more to it, and I'll cover that in an upcoming movie at some point. But let's move on to another thing. Not everything in vector form needs to be clean and iconic and sharp. You might want to get more organic with it. So I want to show you an easy way you can do that, whether you have a Wacom, whether you have the ability to use pressure sensitivity. I'm going to show you a way you can do it with just a mouse, because that's all I'm using right now, a mouse. I don't even use an Apple mouse. I hate Apple's mouses. I actually use a Microsoft notebook mouse, if you believe that. What we're going to do, I just noticed I don't have the ears, so let's go over here, go to the pencil tool, and I'm just going to draw out an ear. It doesn't need to be perfect. This guy's already ugly, so it's not going to matter. Right up here is this piece of art. Notice I have this stroke going through it. That's just to show you the principle that what's on the left and on the right need to align exactly. Anything in between doesn't matter. We're going to create a pattern brush here that works pretty cool. So we're going to select this. We're going to go to another tool. Actually, it's under this one, the blob brush. And if you double click on the blob brush, boy, that's a tongue twister. You can size it. I think 3 points fine. You don't want these selected for what we're going to do in the top left. You don't want merge only with selection. You want it to do it by default. So leave those unchecked, click OK. And now down here, we want to add to this profile. So maybe we add a little bump here like this and let go. Now notice it just cohesively fuses with the art. Maybe we want to add a bump out down here like this. We can add that over here. It'll do that. And the same thing's true if you want to do other edits. You could go to the eraser tool. Although the eraser tool I found doesn't work as well as the blob brush. I wish it was as precise. It kind of simplifies it a little more. But you can go in here and knock out stuff. So it's like kind of carving or whittling away your vector art until you get something organic like this. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. But let's go ahead and open up our brushes palette, drag it out here. And what we want to do here is we want to go to thumbnail view, because we're going to drag and drop this right into the palette. We're going to select pattern brush, and we're going to go OK. And a pattern brush, this is the straight element we made. Illustrator's algorithm can create the corners for this like this. If you wanted to create the inner corner, you could drop that in here, and you could create a graphic if you wanted the end point to change here and here. But we're just going to leave it as is. We're going to select tints for colorization, so it takes on the color of whatever path we attach it to. And we'll just call this organic. I think that works. Click OK, and now we have this path. The reason why I have this artwork, and I probably should have done something cooler, like a nice floral pattern. We have some weird guy with a big nose, but we're just going to apply this to it and check out the look you get. You get a very organic look and feel. Now, if you select all of these and group them, and let's say we clone this, Command-C, Command-F, and we want to change the color. Let's go to our swatches, and I don't know, maybe we change it to this color of a path, and we're going to kind of nudge it, if you will. We'll offset it 3 nudges down, 3 nudges over. We'll cut it and paste behind. You can create something really cool with a nice little drop shadow. So this is just one simple, easy way you can create something that definitely has a more organic flair to it. And you can accomplish a lot of really cool things using this methodology. So if I turn on this layer, you can see I created this dragon using this drag and draw, get the pun there, drag and draw vector brush pin set that I created. And I've included this in the exercise files for this movie. So if you want to get access to those, just read the information, the description below the video, and that'll give you everything you need to know. The very last thing I want to talk to you about and showcase is the use of textures in vector art. I've been doing it for years. I love it. So whatever you're creating, let's say it's a flyer for an educational event, and the theme is on Nefertari, the Egyptian queen, and you want to start using some textures. So all we're going to do is we're going to start placing some textures. And textures, I'm talking rasterized bitmap textures derived from photographs or created by hand. They're not vector textures. I never use vector textures. I think you get a more authentic look, and you're going to see that. So we're going to place our first one. The first one's going to be a grayscale, and I have an F10 key set up that will for placing. So I just hit F10, select the grayscale TIFF on my desktop, click place. The icon will come up. Doesn't matter where I click to place it. I'm going to just go to align and align it with our artboard here. I think that looks fine. Now, with this selected, our background color was this purple, and I have this darker purple right next to it here. I'm going to color it that darker purple, and then I'm going to adjust the value on this. I don't want it 100%. I want it to be transparent, so I'm going to adjust it to 40%. And then all I'm going to do is select multiply, so it kind of integrates with the background color and pushes back and falls back into place. We're going to go ahead and place another one, so let's hit F10. This time we're going to place a bitmap TIFF. The difference between a grayscale is a grayscale. A bitmap TIFF is literally just white pixels and black pixels. And when you place a bitmap TIFF into Illustrator, by default, the white pixels are transparent. I learned this back in the 90s when I was creating some t-shirt designs, and I was actually using freehand. It works the same way in freehand back then. Thankfully, it works the same way in Illustrator because I use these all the time for textures. We'll align it. This looks pretty cool. All we're going to do now is we're going to colorize this one dark purple as well, because we just want that to interact with the background and add that nice kind of authentic crackling look. This was actually a concrete retaining wall outside of a parking garage. So it's amazing where you can find cool textures. It can be in very pedestrian places. It doesn't need to be anything special. But I think that looks really good. It adds some nice contrast and it models the background nicely. We want to add one more. So let's go back and we're going to add this one. This is flecking. So I'm going to go ahead and place this one. And this one, it's a little harder to see because all this is, let's go ahead and color it like yellow or yellow color here. You can see all these flecks. Well, what is this? Well, I actually don't ever throw an old toothbrush away. Clean it out, put it aside, and then when you have some spare time, water down some acrylic black paint or India ink and just put on a glove if you have one because your thumb will get all black, just flick it at paper and you can create these really cool textures, then scan it in. This is where having a flatbed scanner comes in. This texture I created literally, I think, 12, 13 years ago, and I've been using it ever since. And because I scanned it in and created it myself, it's like 600 DPI. The nice thing about textures, they never go out of style. That's the best thing about textures. It adds humanity to vector artwork. Now, I don't want it to be 100% value, so I'm going to knock the value down to 50%, just so you get a flare of that yellow, since we have it elsewhere, flowing through everything. So all we're going to do now is we're going to turn on this layer, which is a mask. So I'm going to go ahead and select all the elements on that layer and the elements on this layer, and I'm just going to mask those into the background shape like that. I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward. I integrated the same textures on the character herself just because it makes it more immersive, and added some texturing in on the type itself. So that's how I utilize textures. This is just one example. It works great for doing t-shirt designs. Never, in my opinion, I don't think you should image trace textures. It just looks bad. It doesn't look authentic. And if you use bitmap textures, you get so much better of a result of it looking authentic, or truly degraded. So I hope you enjoyed this content. And more importantly, I hope it helps you improve your own creative workflow so you can create the ideas you come up with. If you like this movie, please consider sharing a link to my YouTube channel on social media. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you for watching People of Process. I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.